You know, one of the key ingredients in performing under stress is a form of stress inoculation. If you've encountered the experience previously, you know, the idea of your life flashing through your eyes, you know, is actually your brain seeking for some life experience that's similar to where you've been.
Mental simulation is another extremely powerful, research-proven technique. It's been used by professional athletes, Olympic athletes, and now by military and law enforcement personnel for many decades now. And it's very well grounded in research. Basically, what you can do is you simulate in your mind various crisis situations and thinking through what you would do, and mentally picture yourself doing those actions successfully. And what you're doing is you're preloading your brain with information that you can rapidly in a crisis draw upon. The brain's an amazing survival mechanism, as Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman tells us.
Decisions and actions performed under stress will be much more powerfully carved into our neurons. If you've got a simulation of the event and you perform a certain way under the stress of the simulation, then the learning lesson is carved in much more deeply.
So it's important when we mentally simulate that we simulate the right way. We simulate the proper steps for a particular situation. We simulate succeeding.
That's why it's so essential that we, in training, do what we ought to do and do it the right way, because that's what comes back. Soldiers in combat, police officers in simulators, not only do they become stress inoculated, but they also have a response immediately in place, having faced a similar situation in training that they can lean back on. You do not rise to the occasion, you sink to the level of your training.
And we don't lie around worrying about scenarios. This is not dwelling on the negative. It's focusing on running through a simulation of what you would do in different settings for different type situations and practicing winning, practicing doing the right thing so that your brain will take over.
When we talk about mental simulation, a lot of people might ask, well, how can I do that myself? I'm not a police officer or firefighter. How could I do this type of exercise myself? Well, I'll use the example again of schools. A lot of times we go into a school environment and we find that maybe staff members aren't really too concerned about safety. They're worried about Sandy Hook, but they're not thinking about the average safety incident. And when we show them our video scenarios, then they start thinking about, oh, that's the kind of thing that does happen from time to time. That's the thing that we've heard about in the news. Or what would happen if that was in my classroom? How would I call for help? If I'm outside, would I have a radio or a cell phone? And so that's one of the ways that we get people to start thinking about that, get those wheels rolling in their brain about this type of exercise. So the average person can do this by watching some of the scenarios we have available as a resource and thinking, you know, if I was in that situation, how would I respond?
So if you've previously experienced it in a training event, the more realistic the better. Then when the real thing happens, you won't panic. You'll be stress inoculated. You're better able to perform.
Stress affects people in many different ways, and you never know until you get into a situation. So a lot of people go into combat, they don't know how they're going to react. You never know. So we mitigate a lot of it with repetition and training, and everything's muscle memory. So we train under stress. We stress our bodies before we shoot our weapons. We stress our bodies before we do any event, really. So when we actually do encounter, actual combat stress, we've simulated those type of actions, like working out, running with bricks in your hands to make your hands tired, and then shooting. That way, in combat, when your heart rate's up, your breathing's up, you're stressed out, you've already practiced doing it that way.
We do fire drills from our youngest days, but we need to prepare for violence in the same way. We have fire sprinklers, fire exits, fire alarms, fire trucks, fire drills, fire hydrants, but what have we done to prepare for violence? And do we live in fear of fire because we have fire sprinklers and fire exits and fire alarms, fire drills? No, because we prepare for fire through simulations and drills. And when the real thing comes, we don't have to fear. Our enemy is not fear, our enemy is denial. And denial spins you down the path of panic and post-traumatic stress disorder, all the negative response that can come with it.
It's a very powerful tool to give you control back over your life, to build that confidence and prepare yourself better to make good decisions in an emergency.